Representative Ro Khanna, he is in the middle of negotiations right now on the infrastructure bill and the reconciliation bill. Representative Khanna, welcome back to TYT.
Jake, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for making the time in the middle of this very hectic day. So I want to ask you first about the state of the negotiations. So in the beginning, as everybody knows, progressives had said that they had a red line, that the Senate must vote for the Build Back Better bill, the reconciliation bill first. Then the House would vote on the infrastructure bill, the bipartisan corporate-backed bill. Now that line has moved, and Representative Jayapal and yourself have said, no, the Senate doesn't have to vote for it. The House will vote for both. That kind of defeats the point. But now today, the latest developments are that apparently Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, is asking you guys to not even vote for it in the House, to have a vague promise that you might vote on it later. The bill that progressives actually want, the one that President Biden pretended to want, that you're gonna get a vague promise on that. So you just came out of a meeting on this issue. Will progressives fold again and vote the way that Pelosi wants them to without even getting an assurance it'll pass in the House?
Well, Jack, let me share what our perspective is. I don't think that progressives ever had a red line. What we had were priorities. We wanted to make sure there was robust climate. We wanted to make sure universal preschool. We wanted to make sure expansion of dental, vision, hearing. We wanted to make sure robust housing. We wanted to make sure childcare, free community college, paid family leave. Now, some of those priorities didn't make it in. The expansion of vision and hearing and dental, it's dubious. Free community college didn't make it in. Paid leave right now is on the bubble. But a lot of our priorities have made it in. The universal preschool, the childcare, and actually a very, very robust climate bill. And it's in the framework. So our view is, how do we get this through? Now, no one is going to vote just on the infrastructure bill. What we're debating is whether a vote on the rule on Build Back Better is enough or not, and how do we move this forward? You have to understand there's there's some people who don't want anything.
Out of
in my view.
Out them. Why don't they vote? Why don't they vote? So Representative Khanna, you're saying, I understand the proposal, the compromise on top of a compromise that Pelosi has proposed, which is that you vote on some nonsense rule about how you will vote later. But let's be super, super clear. You would, if this goes through, you would vote for the one that Republicans and corporate Democrats want, that corporations love, and you would not vote for the Build Back Better bill today. That's just a fact. That's what Pelosi wants. So is that going to happen, or is it not going to happen?
We're pushing back. We want to have the bill both votes today. That's what we're saying. We're saying that the 6 House Democrats, the conservative Democrats or moderate Democrats, whatever you want to call them, actually would vote yes if we have both bills. And that's actually the negotiation taking place today. I probably disagree with you a little bit on the bipartisan infrastructure bill. I think we need the Build Back Better on the climate part. But there are parts of the bipartisan infrastructure bill that are good, like getting broadband to rural communities and urban communities, lead pipe funding that Rashida Tlaib got in. So I think overall the bill is a good one, but my bigger concern is it's not sufficient. We have to have the entirety of the agenda for working class, and that's why we've been pushing so hard to have the vote on Build Back Better.
Okay, so I'm just gonna ask it bluntly. Are you guys gonna fold or not? Because you said that you needed the Senate vote. You have to acknowledge you did not get that. You have retracted your position. That is clearly losing in negotiations, clearly. Now they're saying, well, since you guys can be pressured into anything, we'll bully you further into this nonsense rule vote. You explained on CNN why it's nonsense. You explained it. You said, and you did a great job in explaining it. You said, well, why do we need the Congressional Budget Office to rule on this? Several different entities have already ruled on what it would be. So it is clearly them saying to you guys, we don't think you'll ever stand up for anything. So are you progressives going to stand up and say, no, we will not listen to leadership, bully us into submission, or are they going to say, yes, we submit?
Well, let me just say, we've stood up twice, right? Twice they tried to have a vote on the infrastructure bill, and we didn't. We said, no, we wanted a framework, and the agreement we struck is when the president has a framework, we would support the framework. And I think it's important for progressives, I know there's disagreement out there, but I'm a straight shooter. I think there are a lot of progressive things in the framework. I know people focus on what's not in there, but universal preschool, childcare, the fact that we have huge climate, including a methane tax at $500 billion, that's not spin. That's actually good policy.
But
look,
Ro, you didn't. But you got it. Look, let's just do one thing at a time. You guys said that you would not vote in the House until the Senate passed Build Back Better. You're now saying, no, we withdraw our position. You have to say that's true, because it is true, right?
Well, there was a disagreement. There were different opinions, but certainly our chair, Pramila Jayapal, said initially, I don't know how she framed it, that we want some ironclad agreement.
I can read a New York Times quote for you. Progressive Democrats warned the House leadership that a majority of their members will withhold their support for a $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill until the Senate passes a second, far larger package containing their spending priorities. That's a fact. So
yeah, but the challenge is if we really were to hold to that, we'd have nothing. I mean, you really would then the president's agenda would not happen, and we'd move on to the next issue.
But hold on, Representative Khanna, that's of course not true, right? So you wouldn't have it yet. Hold on, you wouldn't have it yet, and then what would happen next is pressure would then go back to Manchin and Sinema, and they would say, well, the progressives are holding the line. And they're doing the same exact thing that Manchin and Sinema are doing. Manchin and Sinema are drawing red lines all over you guys. They're saying, I'm not going to do any of these things.
The difference is, I think Manchin and Sinema would be perfectly fine if nothing happens. I think they'd be fine. Okay.
Well, but Representative Khanna, I understand what you're saying, because they don't mind if these bills don't pass, because they don't care about the country. They don't care about their voters. I understand the voters of West Virginia and Arizona are super clear. They want both of these bills. Yeah, there's no. I am going that far. I'm going that far. They definitely are against their own voters, and they're doing it for the donor money. Everybody knows this, Representative Khanna. Everybody. Are you guys ever going to say it? And the reason why I say that, Representative Khanna, is because if you don't say it, then you're right. Then Manchin and Sinema have no downside. They could bury every bill that would help the voters of their states, and they can cash in on it, as Sinema has. She's collected over about $1 million from drug companies because she's corrupt. And so the only way that you guys can get leverage is to say, one, we're holding up the infrastructure bill, which now you guys say you're not going to, so they will steamroll you. And number two, the second thing you could say is, okay, here's our leverage. You guys are corrupt. We're going to call out every single one of your donors. We're going to humiliate you, because you should be humiliated, because you destroyed the Democratic agenda and you did it for your donors. Now, wouldn't that have an impact, Representative Khanna?
Well, the question is, how are you going to get their votes? I actually don't think that would get their votes.
Oh yeah, it would. Yeah,
I mean, Manchin's in a state that Trump carried by 40%.
But that state hates this position. That state loves paid family leave. It's in the polling, it's not disputable. That state loves lowering drug prices. It's in the polling, it's not disputable. The only thing is, nobody in the state knows that he's betraying them, because you guys won't say it. The threat of saying it could get him to move. It's called hardball. If you say it's not gonna move and they're gonna kill it anyway, well, then say, okay, there's gonna be consequences for you guys. Otherwise, do you see that you guys can never win if you don't actually play hardball with these guys? Because then they're gonna steamroll you. Here, I'll ask you another question. If you say, even if you got the best case scenario, Ro, and you said, okay, look, we'll leave Pelosi that we're gonna vote later in the House and Build Back Better.
And by the way, we're pushing back on that, so this is an ongoing negotiation. I mean, but I'm just being
okay. I hear you.
We're pushing for the 2 votes, so let's see how it turns out.
But let's say that she actually meant it, which I think it's all right. Let's say she means it, okay? And you guys actually do pass it in the House. Then it goes over to the Senate. Now remember, Joe Manchin said that he gives you no promise at all that he's going to vote yes. Right. So then he turns around and goes, well, I'm not gonna vote for it. I didn't promise you that I'd vote for it, so it's dead. You voted for my bill, you're a sucker. I'm not voting for your bill. I told you I wasn't gonna vote for your bill. What do you say to that?
I don't think that, because the president has said that he will deliver those 50 votes, and I don't think Manchin will tank the Biden presidency. Okay. Just like he voted for the American Republic. I think a bigger risk is that they will dilute what we pass in the House and take stuff out. But I do think it will eventually pass. But I agree with you that the risk is how much further will the dilution be of that bill?
So Representative Khanna, those are great points. Let's talk about those one at a time. once you pass the bill that Manchin and Sinema want in the House, you have zero leverage. So now that you have zero leverage, especially because you guys are not willing to threaten their reputation.
I'm not convinced that Manchin and Sinema are that much. Let's get the bipartisan infrastructure bill passed. Certainly Manchin. I mean, I think part of it is just let's not spend money. So I'm not convinced we have that much leverage that he really wants the infrastructure bill. But that's a
okay. All right, but whatever little leverage that is, would it instantly disappear? So if you have the vote today or you have it a week from now in the House, it doesn't really matter because either way your leverage is gone in the Senate. So that's point one. And point two, you say, and every Democrat in the House, and the progressives, as everybody knows, I'm a progressive. I'm fans of the progressive legislators. You've been on our show many times. You've been incredibly generous with it. You've been honest. We appreciate all that. But since you guys are not willing to threaten outing their donors, there goes the second piece of leverage. So you have absolutely no leverage and you have no promise from Manchin. So I'm asking you if you're right. Wouldn't you be right that then Manchin could eviscerate the Build Back Better bill and go, well, I didn't tell you I wasn't going to eviscerate it, and you knew I was going to eviscerate it, so I did. I took out every popular provision there is because my donors didn't want it.
I don't believe he will do that because he would then have made a commitment to the president that was false. Now you're saying theoretically, is it possible that he could eviscerate it? Yes, I don't. I believe it would stay around the 1.75 number. Where I'm most concerned is there going to be a dilution on the methane fee? Is there going to be a dilution on some of the climate provisions? And how much is the revenue going to tax the wealthy? Yes, we have to be vigilant. We have to continue to push, but I think we have to push through the White House. And the president has a huge interest in getting Build Back Better because it's popular, because he knows that he needs this for the midterms and for 2024. And if it's diluted, it's going to depress the base in 2022 and 2024.
He doesn't care about that. He's not even he's barely a Democrat. So Representative Khanna, look, this is an important news point in the question here, because you're saying that Biden has some sort of implicit promise from Manchin and presumably Sinema that they're going to vote for this version of the bill with 1.75.
The framework.
The framework, whatever that means. And Manchin is saying, no, I'm not giving any promises. So what's actually happening here? Does Biden have Manchin and Sinema's promise or doesn't he?
I think publicly Manchin doesn't want to make those commitments, but our belief is that the president has a private commitment from 50 senators that he could pass this, and that he didn't come to us for many months, and he only came to the progressives once he had that commitment. I personally believe that he will pass the Build Back Better agenda, that Manchin ultimately will be a yes vote. But I acknowledge that the most popular provision in this was the Bernie Sanders increase dental, vision, hearing, and dental and vision are out. So I grant you that the bill has lost popular provisions that it should have. It should have a much more robust prescription drug negotiation. It should tax the billionaires and the corporations. It's not raising corporate tax rates because of Senator Sinema. So I'm not here to sort of sugarcoat things. What I'm saying is that we have a moderate president. We didn't win with Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. In light of that, he's adopted a lot of progressive policies like childcare, universal preschool, and most importantly, climate. And this is significant progress in light of the circumstances. And that's where the disagreement is. Among not just us, but amongst people who've been critical of the caucus.
So Representative Khanna, we're not even talking about disagreement. I think that what remains of the bill is, I think the negotiations went terribly. We lost on incredibly popular provisions.
What grade would you give the bill? What grade would you give the current president's framework on an A to F in terms of progressive goals?
So Representative Khanna, I grant you that there are parts of the bill that are positive. There's still $550 billion for climate change until Manchin eviscerates it in the Senate and gets rid of it. But okay, for now, in the $1.75 trillion provision, yes, there are some good provisions, including universal pre-K, which by the way, corporations love because they want to get everybody back to work. So everything that's currently in the bill has basically been approved by corporate donors. Now that doesn't mean they're all bad. There's some things like universal pre-K that the corporations have allowed us to have because it also benefits them. Are they not merciful? So it's not 100% loss in terms of the bill itself. But in terms of the negotiations, would you then grant to me that if the negotiations were between 1.5 trillion and 3.5 trillion, and in our best case scenario, we're at 1.75 trillion, and we're not even guaranteed to get that you guys have lost the negotiations?
Well, no, because Manchin started out at 0. I mean, that
okay, we started out at 6 trillion. Then okay, then let's meet back at 3.
But we have a case where we have a 50-50 Senate and 200 and.
By the way, but Representative Khanna, you have 3 House Democrats that could block any bill. So they're 50-50, you're nearly 50-50. Why won't
the difference is the difference is they have an advantage because the status quo is fine for them. If everything blows up, if Joe Biden doesn't accomplish a single thing, there are a lot of people who will be fine with that. We want to move progress. So maybe you could say
Representative Khanna, that is true. That is true. That is true. Okay, but that is why we say your only leverage is to shame them publicly. Look here, let's take one example, and then you've been very generous with your time. Okay, so paid family leave has an 88% popular. I'm sorry, it has about a 3/4 popularity. Lowering drug prices, the specific provision to lower drug prices has an 88% popularity. 9 out of 10 Americans, including about the same number in West Virginia and Arizona, to be absolutely clear. Okay, so what you could do is say, why isn't Manchin and Sinema in favor of lowering drug prices? Why are they against 9 out of 10? Americans, and everybody knows the answer to that. It's because they're being bribed. It's legal bribes in the form of campaign donations, but it is bribes nonetheless. If you said that, of course they would catch feelings and you would be persona non grata on Capitol Hill, you've offended the elites, but it is absolutely true, and it would get a lot of press attention to the fact that they are corrupt, and that would hurt their reputation, the only thing they care about.
I don't think that's the way to make progress and get the vote. I mean, there's a reason Senator Sanders, who's worked with them and no one can question his integrity, chooses to make it about ideas and doesn't choose to sort of make.
You're giving away leverage. You're giving away leverage. Representative Khanna, it isn't about that like, hey, we're not eschewing ideas. We are in favor of ideas. We're in favor of the idea of lower drug prices. The only people who are against lower drug prices are drug companies. They're giving millions of dollars to Manchin and Sinema. Now, I get you're saying in the middle of negotiations, you don't want to blast them with a nuclear level attack publicly. But if you care about those ideas and you care about those policies and you know you have a winning hand, wouldn't you behind the scenes at least threaten that? And it's obvious that you guys are not threatening that because they're walking around free as a daisy. They don't have any concern at all. And progressives have never shamed corporate Democrats, have never challenged corporate Democrats, and that's why they steamroll us. Isn't all of that fairly obvious?
Well, I co-chaired, as you know, Bernie Sanders' campaign, which every speech was about the hold that the pharmaceutical industry, Wall Street, big corporations have on American politics. He's spoken out. He may not personalize it, but he's spoken about industry.
But if you don't personalize it, you have no leverage. If you don't personalize it, you have no leverage at all. And Representative Khanna, the mainstream press hates progressives. So every time an election is lost,
things are changing. They're not as
really. I just saw your interview with Jake Tapper. It was the most conservative hatchet job I've ever seen. He blamed you for not passing the bill when Manchin and Sinema are the ones who have prevented us from passing it for months and months and months. And then they run McAuliffe, the worst conservative Democrat in the party, and then they blame the left for losing the election. That's insane. When are you guys going to fight back?
I understand that. The progressive movement, wants us to be tougher, wants the caucus to be bolder. I get it. I read the Twitter threads here or there. I mean, I see the criticism. Here's what I would say to them. First, be proud of at least 2 times where we took a stand and stood up and didn't have the infrastructure vote, and look at all of the progressive policies we've gotten in there. And then the second thing I'd say is, keep building, keep running, keep challenging incumbents, keep building seats, keep building progressive power. If you want a progressive movement, it's not going to happen overnight. And be critical of us where you think you keep pushing us. But what we're trying to do is maximize what we can achieve in a system where we have a moderate Democratic president, self-described moderate, where we have a 50-50 Senate, and where we have fairly moderates in House leadership. So help us continue to build.
So let me be clear about the facts. Representative Khanna is right that 2 different times Progressive Caucus did stand up, and corporate Democrats had to retreat. Now, unfortunately, at the end, when you give them what they want, they still won. That's also a fact. Those are both true. So, of course, the end is what matters most, but it is true. And I want you guys to understand, I'm not saying this because he's on. We don't care about access journalism. We don't care about it if no one comes out, okay? Representative Khanna has been consistently the most honest and the bravest. And he's the only one that will come on progressive media to discuss these issues and to have a frank conversation. We've asked everyone, you see Representative Khanna, you don't see the others, so tremendous credit there, okay? But Representative Khanna, I've got to say at the end, we need, the progressive base and progressive media needs you guys in Congress to understand. It isn't that we're venting, it isn't about passion, it isn't about emotion, it's about strategy. And if you don't have leverage on the corporate Democrats, and you never will in appealing to their principles or their voters. They don't care about principles, they don't care about their voters. This bill proves it beyond a shadow of a doubt. These bills are incredibly popular in West Virginia, Arizona, and I challenge every corporate media hack out there that watches this interview. Do your math, do your job, look at the polling, report the polling. Report what the people of West Virginia and Arizona and the whole country actually believe. Stop lying about what the people of America want. They want this bill. Representative Khanna is right that they want this bill. So finally, Representative Khanna, do you get that if we're asking you to fight back against the corporate Democrats because of leverage, that's the only way that you can out the corruption and why they're voting no? It is so important. If you put a spotlight on why they're voting no, then it gets people to ask Manchin and Sinema, hey, we did a story, Manchin made $5 million from his coal company. That's a fact, that's on TYT.com, but you could go check it anywhere. And he has another $5 million in wealth in his coal company. How is that not relevant? And that's on top of the campaign contributions. Okay, so just the actual question was, do you get that that's leverage and it's strategy? It's not just to vent, that there is a purpose behind it, and we could use that purpose to actually pass the policy.
I believe, Cenk, that there are different roles for different people in a democracy. I believe that the role of progressive legislators is to help mobilize, but then also to figure out how we get things done. I think that there's a role for independent media. I think there's a role for mobilization. I think there's a role, as you know, I've always supported primary challenges, and there's a role certainly in Arizona where you have a Democratic state and a senator who's voting differently than Mark Kelly for us to have mobilization. So I believe what I don't want to have happen, and let me end with this, is this kind of sense, well, it doesn't matter. We got these Justice Democrats in there. We got AOC, we got Ilhan, we got Rashida, we got Pramila. We got a bunch of folks in, Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, and nothing is changing. And we had Bernie Sanders' energy, and let's just leave. Look at how far we've come from 2016 to now. Look at the fact that what has become the center of the Democratic Party. Is it perfect? No. Is the progress fast enough? No. But if we can do this in 5 years, think about the next 10. And the worst thing, I'd rather people beat up on me, criticize me, just don't disengage. Keep winning races, keep building. I'm confident eventually we'll get a progressive president, progressive leaders, and that's what will allow for the real change.
All right, we'll leave it at that, and I'll give you one last piece of context for the audience that corporate media doesn't do. Representative Khanna was the first person to say that he would join Justice Democrats when he knew that it would involve primarying Democratic incumbents. That was an incredibly brave decision, and so that has defined him. And you should know that context here, even if you're frustrated with his positions today, if you are, right? And he just laid out a case for why you shouldn't be, and you should be excited about the future. So Representative Khanna, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it.